Hey YouTube, Dosm Writer here. This is going to be the next installment in my Dosms Sentai 45 series. Sort of going off some of the ideas for my overrated and underrated series, this is going to be Sentai series I have changed my mind about. And this means that over the course of watching it or rewatching it, my opinion has either changed for the better or worse. I sort of realized I have a solid handful of those types of series when I was making those previous lists. And I thought it would be interesting to discuss and see which ones you guys have had those experiences with and sort of show that sometimes, I mean there's a couple I've changed the opinion for the worse, but shows that sometimes if you come at a series from a different angle, you might actually be able to find a new appreciation for it. So some of these are ones that I either watched one time and didn't like, or I started to watch, then I came around to later in the series, meaning that it was kind of worth giving it a shot. And other ones are ones that I didn't like, and I took a break from, and then watching it later on gave me a new perspective on it. So let's kind of start. This isn't going to be a numbered list, I'm going to kind of just go in order. And so, to a degree, I will say Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, which if you watch my channel, you know I don't have a lot of love for this series, but I thought it was worth noting as my opinion has changed on this season multiple times. It was one I got to check out early on when I became a Sentai fan, and I initially really quite liked what I saw because the early episodes are filled with lots of great mythology and fleshing out things, and I was excited to one day get to see the whole thing. And then when I did, I very strongly disliked it. I mean, I wrote songs about how much I disliked Zyuranger. And then later on, I rewatched it for another video series, which is on the way and sometime in the near future. And I didn't change my opinion in terms of like, oh my god, I like it now, but I think I just mellowed my dislike. Like, don't get me wrong. I will take a cheap shot at Zyuranger any day of the week in any of my videos, so don't be surprised if that still happens. But I kind of feel like I just mellowed my hatred for it and was able to see some of the good parts and sort of accept it for what it is, even though I think it's quite bad in some parts. Next up is Ninja Sentai Kakuranger, which I initially watched once and I kind of rushed it, and I wasn't a fan. You know, it felt like a lot of the same things in 90s Sentai that I dislike, and I don't know, I just wasn't a fan. And then I revisited it again and I rewatched it again for another video series, which will be happening sometime hopefully in the near future, and I really quite liked it the second time around. It's not perfect, mind you, it still has some 90s Sentai things I don't like, it still has some filler I don't like, but it's actually a lot better than I gave it credit for, and I was really glad I gave it a second chance. It actually has some pretty solid storylines and some pretty solid pacing where you have multiple like multi-parter arcs instead of just all filler, and they actually pay attention to the characters as individuals and get development, and you don't have that typical thing where most episodes that aren't plot related are filler episodes about nobody filler characters. Like, they actually spend time on their individual characters and have arcs for that, and it's actually a very solid Sentai series that I have a soft spot for now. Just as a quick mention, I think it's worth mentioning Megaranger because it was in a similar boat to Zyuranger, where I got to watch the first episodes early on and I really dug it a lot and was excited to get back into it. And then when I finally watched it, I just really didn't like it. I found it to be really boring series, lots of filler. I feel like I didn't get a lot from the characters as individuals. Maybe my mind will change when I revisit it, because I haven't revisited it like I did Zyuranger. But that was one definitely that my opinion just completely shifted when I actually got to finish the show out. Ninjinjer is a good example of one, also a little bit flip-floppy, because when I first saw the first handful of episodes, I liked it. But then when I started to actually check it out, the first almost like 15, 16-ish episodes, I was like, oh, this is kind of boring. I really don't like it. This is going to be a slog. But then once I got the complete picture, it became one of my all-time favorites, and I really grew to appreciate it. And the reason I wanted to highlight something like that is because there are some shows in general, but it happens a lot in Toku series, where it might be a bit of an initial difficult push for the first 5, 10, 15 episodes. I know that sounds like a lot, but if you can get past that, then you might actually find a series you quite like, and then retroactively, the earlier episodes you didn't like might be easier to watch. It's kind of like Parks and Rec. I did not like the first season at all, almost didn't watch the show. But once I fell in love with the show, when I rewatch season 1 now, it's no problem because I'm already in love with those characters. So you can have that happen with Toku series, and I was glad that I pushed through, because even though I was bored initially with Go-Onger, I wound up really liking it. Now we get into this era of... Now we have the only one on this list where my opinion kind of changed for the negative for the most part, which, not negative, but just kind of more evened out. which was Shinkenger, which was mentioned in my overrated or underrated, I don't remember. It was overrated list. So Shinkenger, when it was airing, was immensely popular for a lot of reasons, you know, because it's a cool show. It's got some cool designs, cool concepts, and it's also one of the series that started many new Sentai fans off, because that was when Power Rangers was briefly canceled again. So it was a series a lot of people picked up for the first time, so they would have something Power Ranger-esque to watch. So it holds a special place for many people, and it has a lot of cool stuff going for it. And I got kind of caught up in all of the hype of it. I'm like, yeah, Shinkenger for life! And then when I look back, I'm like, I didn't really like that show that much. Someone commented on my last video, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but that was a really good point. He said, you know, the last arc was really good, and I think that's the last memory people have, so they remember it being really good because of that. I'm not saying that's because of everyone, and I think that was part of it too, is I was like, Shinkenger, yeah, Shinkenger hype, and the last arc was really good, but so much of it was so boring. The beginning fillers were really bad, and like I mentioned in that previous video, the middle part, God, one of the summers of Sentai that dragged on the most for me. I just remember it being a slog, like, ugh, Shinkenger's out, I have to watch it. It was just, yeah, not that I hate the show now, but I realized I really didn't like the show that much. And that's kind of one of the only ones on this list that's like that. And we get into this era of series that I stopped watching regularly and went back to and was able to see kind of a better picture. And the first one in that was Go-Onger. If you remember, again, back to the old RR days, the Go-Onger prank where we stopped watching it without telling our fellow co-host. But I was not into Go-Onger. I liked the suits, I liked the concept, but I just was not a fan of the characters and the filler and just the everything, and I just couldn't handle it. And then I think I quit somewhere around, I think it was a little bit before the Mantarentis arc, maybe somewhere in the Mutants arc. And so when I caught up, after I got through the first few episodes, I actually found some solid stuff there. It's not a great series for me, mind you, but the catch-up was actually pretty enjoyable, and I was able to enjoy the rest of the run, and I think the second half was much more solid, so I was able to appreciate the things that I actually liked about it, and things like Braidjira as a villain, and so I don't think it became a favorite after I stopped watching it, but when I look back on it now, I don't think so much about the hatred for it. I think kind of more about the things I liked about it, and you know, I can see it as an okay series sometimes. Next one I did that with was ToQger, which was a very similar boat, where I was not having an easy time with the first half of the show watching it regularly, and I just couldn't stand it anymore, and I took a break from it. And then when I came back, it was actually really good. I would say it was even more positive than Go-Onger, and then when I came back, and I think both Go-Onger and ToQger, I think, benefited from being able to watch it more steadily in a row rather than, you know, taking a break each week. And I think that just made it much more enjoyable. Maybe it was also a little bit being able to take a break from the week-to-week fan hate and take it back from that. I think that's beneficial if you're in a series that you feel like you're having the fandom's loud opinion one way or the other in your face affecting you. Take a break from it, get away from it, and then it'll allow you to actually see the series through your own eyes. And I feel that's what happened with Go-Onger and ToQger, because when I came back for ToQger, I quite liked it. I quite liked the rest of what I saw. I'm not sure if I retroactively liked the first half, but I was able to appreciate parts of it because of some of the reveals about them being kids kind of retroactively did change stuff about it. See if I have a better time with the first half if I ever revisit it after that, but I can say that plot-wise I did retroactively appreciate some things. But the second half that I watched when I caught up was really good, and ToQger went from a series that I was like hating on and making snide comments at to a series that's actually kind of one of my more fond favorites now. Like I was sad to see it go, I was excited to see the Returns movie, and when I look back on it now, I think of a series that's a little bit of a favorite for me, so that definitely changed my opinion on that. Now this isn't a series I changed my mind on, but I felt it was worth mentioning in this video because it was a similar template of Go-Onger and ToQger where I took a break to stop watching it because I couldn't handle it, which was Ninjinjer. I could not stand Ninjinjer just like I couldn't stand early ToQger and Go-Onger, so I stopped. And I was hoping, crossing my fingers, that the same thing would happen with Go-Onger and ToQger, where suddenly my eyes would be opened and I could enjoy this series. I did not. I still could not stand Ninjinjer, but it was now even worse because I had to see many episodes in a row. So again, this isn't a series I changed my mind about, but I just thought it was worth mentioning that I did that one time and it did not work. Maybe it was because I was anticipating it too much because I had such positive results with ToQger and Go-Onger, and I was kind of looking forward to that. But for me, that series either way didn't work. I didn't like it all around. Who knows? Maybe when I revisit it in the future, but I really hope future Dosm doesn't do that to me. Okay, and then this last one here is one of the most recent ones, which was another similar situation to that, which was Ryusoulger. This happened a little bit differently because I was not a fan of that. Again, you know, this is like a broken record. This is the same story, part 4. I didn't like the early parts. I'm taking, you know, jabs at it. If you watch my early reviews, you can see how much I disliked it. But this time I didn't consciously take a break. Like with Go-Onger, I didn't even know if I was ever coming back. I was just like, I'm done. With ToQger and Ninjinjer, I knew I was going to come back, and with the intent of hopefully me liking the series better when I return. But with Ryusoulger, it was a total accident. It was just procrastination that built up until I had a crap ton of episodes that I had not seen yet. So it was kind of the same thing happening, but it was a total mistake. I didn't mean to fall behind on it. It just sort of happened. I wasn't really trying to do that this time. But it wound up being a similar situation. I would compare it more closely to Go-Onger's, where when I came back, I didn't hate it as much. I found it to be mostly enjoyable-ish. I didn't think it was knocking my socks off or anything. I think in multiple of my reviews, whether it be the individual ones or the series one, I kind of called it a basic Sentai experience, and that was what it was. I didn't have an overwhelming hatred for it. I found them to have some actually really good moments, like in the Zyuranger arc and stuff, but it was watchable week to week, and it was just kind of an overall solid Sentai experience through the rest. And now when I look back on it, there are certain things I do dislike about it, but much like Go-Onger, I don't look back with hatred or negativity. I just kind of look back and say like, yeah, that was an okay Sentai series, and there were these cool things I liked. So I think that and Go-Onger are very aligned in that manner, where I started out with an extreme negativity and was able to just appreciate it as a solid Sentai series for the second half. But it did help me appreciate it for the better. But that is it for this video, and I want to know in the comments, what are some Sentai series, or maybe even some Ranger series that you checked out initially and your opinion changed, maybe for the more positive, if you kind of stepped back from it and were able to revisit it with fresh eyes. Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can get my videos. Dosm Rider, signing out.